As we talked about before, certainly with people selling their houses, it's a big new thing some people go through. But when you already live in a house and you want to make sure that house is maybe, still acting like new, a lot of people go through these different aspects of trying to make their house greener, trying to maybe make sure it's more energy efficient. And Paul Kocharhook is here with us, who's actually an American Lung Association Master Home Environmentalist Volunteer, which I bet $50 I would say right, and somebody's going to pay me. And his company, Pathway Design and Construction, focuses on environmentally friendly building. Well, first of all, welcome, Paul.
Oh, thanks.
How you doing today?
Great.
All right. So maybe explain the concept real quick of these best building practices when it comes to making a house, safe to live in.
Sure. I think when we talk about best building practices, we're basically looking at the house as a whole system, whole ecosystem, basically. Everything's intertwined. You're basically starting from the ground up. We want to make sure that we're keeping water from getting into the exterior envelope of the building and seeping into it. From there, you're starting to tighten up the building, make it more energy efficient.
And explain tightening up a house, because we talked a little bit about that before you came on, and explain that, because I don't know that everybody understands just, hey, you tighten up a house. I mean, you're not going out there with a screwdriver.
Right.
Or maybe you are. I don't know.
Well, in some cases you are, I guess. Because if we're looking at, say, a remodel on an older home, there's a lot of those here in Seattle particularly. You want to, a lot of the homes were built with shiplap on the exterior of the house. So shiplap being just like 8-inch boards that are strapped horizontally across the house. And then you have your siding on top of that, but there's not an air barrier really between the interior and the exterior of the house. And so creating that air barrier, we lose a lot of energy just based on air leaks throughout the house. If we went through, you could count up all the holes in your house, and you could get, a 4 foot by 4 foot hole. Basically, just take a whole window out of your house, and if you were to add up,
really,
it's amazing.
Where
when you go
do these
through.
all? This is door jams. This is windowsill.
It's cable. Drilling a cable or a phone line through the outside of the house. It's retrofitted windows or older windows in homes. Just pretty much everywhere that you look, in your attic, in your crawl space, in your basement. It's everywhere.
And this is kind of what you talk about. Is this concept of a home is breathing, because most homes do have, whether it's a 4 foot square hole or a 2 foot square hole or 8 foot square hole, I suppose, although that would be very large. You'd probably notice. But you have air coming in and out, and that isn't always what people are aiming for because of maybe power and the cost of heating. Yeah,
there's been a huge push recently with the incentives that the utilities are giving us, to put insulation in your homes, put new windows in your homes. Now our homes are acting differently. We're doing it. We're saving money because of it, but we're also finding that there may be an added consequence because of it, because now the home is not acting as it was originally designed back in the 1920s or 30s. It's now acting more like a home that's built more recently in the 2000s, but there's not the mechanical ventilation systems that are put into homes now that stuff gets taken into account.
The fan isn't running.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you talked about this. This is actually a concern with people's health within the home, because if your house isn't breathing, I guess the air just gets stale is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, if you think about a home where our typical, usually the bedrooms are on the upper floors, and that is how air infiltrates through the house. Basically, you're starting at the bottom in through crawl spaces and basements, which is the worst air that you can have in your house, and that's infiltrating up through we call it the stack effect, and it goes up through the first floor and then out through the attic.
Is that as it heats, the hot air rising?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, in a sense. Yeah. But it's basically hot air doesn't really rise. It's the cold air pushing the warmer air out.
Makes sense. And so when you have this stack effect, what happens in the bedrooms?
Yeah, so the bedroom, so we're pushing this dirty air into the bedroom areas, and you think that's where we spend at least 8 hours a day in the bedrooms, and so we're breathing this air. It's
kind of nasty. I mean, you go into your basement. That's that's not exactly what you think about in your clean bedroom.
Yeah, and
less the spiders, I suppose.
And you think of us as an adult, and then you think of the size of our children. And us as adults, we're able to process more of the dirty air, the chemicals that might be in the house, but our children aren't. They're smaller. Their bodies can't handle as much. And what we're seeing is some medical issues that are coming because of just indoor air quality.
And then that's really where Pathway Design and Construction, which is your company, works with the American Lung Association and then the HEAL program. Because whereas maybe in the past it was asbestos, there was other issues that were making people sick, this sounds like it is maybe a newer issue.
It is, yeah, definitely. We'll go in, and with this program, homeowners will call the American Lung Association and say, I have a child that has allergies or has starting to have asthma, whereas maybe they didn't have it before. We've gone into a couple homes where the homeowners have done a recent remodel, and the children were fine. There was no issues beforehand. And what they started noticing is now my child has asthma. And it was a direct correlation to the remodel, whether it was due to the house just being tightened and now not breathing, and the child was maybe allergic to formaldehyde, or in other cases, it's just the dust that had infiltrated throughout the house during the remodel. That's one of the most important things, I think, that if homeowners are doing a remodel, that they require that the contractor create a negative airspace to keep the dust from infiltrating throughout the house.
So it sounds to me like you're saying some of these older houses where people for the last 20 years have been trying to make them greener have actually been not doing a very good job of the health effect for their family.
In some cases, yeah, I think it really depends on the extent of what was done. But yeah, I think we're seeing that it's starting to cause issues for our children.
And so what are some solutions? I mean, certainly people may want to still save money on, the 4-foot gaping hole that's letting all their air out with gas and whatnot so expensive. Some people might still want to seal that up, but they don't want to kill their kids either. So what are some solutions?
So mechanical ventilation is what we end up having to introduce if the home is being tightened up too much. And mechanical ventilation being adding additional exhaust fan, maybe up in the attic space, or just making sure that the exhaust fans that are in the house are working well enough. Or sometimes it's just a fresh air vent through the side of the house to allow fresh air to continue. But in that manner, we can control the size of the hole. And it can also be louvered, so we can create, if it's letting too much air in, say during sleeping time or something, it can be shut down. Or when it's
freezing cold and cold.
Yeah.
I mean, because is there temperature control with this type of ventilation? Or, I mean, does it still maintain the quality of the tightening, I guess you could say?
It does.
I mean, does it still maximize you go out, you're going to try to save money on all your utilities. And so you go through the analysis. They say, here's where all your things need to be fixed. So if you go and now it's too tight, now your house isn't breathing, and now you go put in mechanical ventilations, does it maintain the effectiveness of the house tightening that you originally started with?
Yeah, definitely. And then in some cases, it actually makes the home healthier. Because if we're remodeling a basement, we're taking into account trying to get the dirty air or the moisture out. And that's where you get a lot of it, is with the moisture. So if we're creating a space where we don't have moisture, or we minimize the amount of moisture that's getting into the house, we can make a big difference.
So it can actually not only maintain, and it'll actually improve the effectiveness of some of the green things you've been trying to do as far as cheapening your electric bill.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, Paul, thanks so much for joining us. Again, that's Paul Kocharhook with Pathway Design and Construction. Speaking of kids and keeping them healthy, have you ever thought about different ways you can keep your kids financially healthy? We're going to talk about that when we come back. My name is Ben Brashen. You're listening to Brashen on It.